Good evening, everyone. My name is Sue Thompson, and I'm one of the RSC's regional coordinators, and I've set up this webinar to help answer any questions you may have about applying to study chemistry at university. We're going to start tonight with presentations from 4 university admissions tutors who will be speaking to you about different aspects of the application process. They are from the Universities of Edinburgh, Brighton, Cardiff and UCL in London. You will then be able to ask questions of the presenters by emailing to chemnet@rsc.org. There's going to be 4 more admissions tutors joining us online from the Universities of York, Birmingham, East Anglia and Queen's University Belfast. All will be ready to answer your questions. If you would like a particular tutor to answer your question, then please state this when you're typing in your question. Right, well, with no further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Bhavik Patel from the University of Brighton, who's going to talk to you about what admissions tutors are looking for in a personal statement.
Excellent. Thank you, Sue. So, good evening, everyone. And today, really, I'm going to try and go over in a very short context what we're looking for when we look at a personal statement when applying for a chemistry course. The first thing I want to say is that really a personal statement is quite personal. So, it's going to be variable between the perceptions every chemistry tutor has on it. But there are some generalities that can be looked at when you look at personal statements. So the first thing is a personal statement important as part of the application? Well, it's a big yes, of course it is. It gives us an insight into a variety of things. One, your personality, but mainly from my perspective as a course tutor, why you're interested in a particular subject area or course, and what you think you're going to get out of it at the end of the day. The last real part of it is obviously an indication of some of your general and interpersonal achievements or skills that gives us a bit more of a flavour about your persona. The other thing I want to reflect on while we think about personal statements is that it's probably the only part of the application form that talks about you per se. Most students have got predicted grades, which are probably similar, and really there's not that much information we get from references. So personal statements really are quite important to bring out your message as part of your application. From my perspective at Brighton, we also take it into big stead when it comes towards interviewing or making decisions, because it can have a favourable aspect towards giving you a firm offer or even accepting you onto a course. So it's really important that you take it quite seriously. What should a personal statement compose of? And I think if I can make it as a box, this personal statement should compose of really 2 aspects. 2/3 of that statement should be about the subject area, why you enjoy chemistry, what makes you passionate about that area or the course that you're studying in. And 1/3 is about really the personal skills or achievements that you've come across while studying those courses. And I want to go over those in a little bit more detail so you get an insight onto the specific things that you could include as part of those areas. So this is really a list of the variety of things that you could put in this general subject area of that personal statement. What courses you've chosen, why you have an interest for them, why that particular subject area is interesting to you or specifically passionate to you, and why you have a keen interest to do that. It's also important to reflect on anything that you've done from your experiences, whether it be work experiences, a Nuffield bursary, any vocational work that relates to your subject area, or anything around that subject area that would be quite useful. Also, any reading interests that you have would also be quite important to add to that area. The last thing that's quite useful in here, and it's quite difficult if you're actually going into a course and you don't really know the directions you're heading into, but if you do, it's quite nice to see your future directions following a chemistry degree course. You know, where are we hoping to take you if you come and join our course? And that's an important aspect that you'd like to see. The other parts are the general sections, of course, and in the general sections, we're looking at really something about your hobbies, your achievements, any interests that you have that make you look like a really good, well-rounded person. Things like Duke of Edinburgh Awards or any entrepreneurships that you've done. This is really an area that we can learn about some other aspects of core skills that are important outside just the main technical or personal skills from the course. And they're interpersonal skills, communication, teamwork, leadership skills, which you can demonstrate through either playing part in sports clubs or taking part in any volunteering work. So it's an important aspect that you can make a unique statement about yourself on that area of the application. The last thing I want to go on to is just some general do's and don'ts about personal statements. And of course, there's a variety of different versions that exist. So, of course, make sure that you take your time, construct that area of your personal statement quite well. Think about a number of paragraphs you want, break up the text so it makes it easier to read and interpret from our perspective. The most important aspect is probably the last point on this slide, which is give some examples of evidence when you're stating key attributes that you have. If you indicate that you have excellent communication skills, well, pretty much everyone has excellent communication skills when written. Where's the evidence that supports that claim? And you can use your experiences to relate to that. In terms of the don'ts, well, these are variable depending on different tutors as well. Don't use fancy language. Don't try and tell me how chemistry works. I know that. Talk about aspects that I don't know about, and that will be more useful. Try not to waffle on. It's very boring for us to try and go through thousands of applications that come through the doorstep, and therefore, make sure they're engaging when we start reading them. Important thing, and it varies between chemistry tutors, is that some people don't really see the same sense of humour that you may have, so make sure you don't indicate a variety of your plethora of comedy skills while you're doing your application. Don't lie, of course. If you're going to an institution where interviews are going to be held, the personal statement may be well utilised as part of that interview process, and therefore it's important that you speak the truth. Don't copy as well is important, and I want to reflect on that because it's part of something that could really affect you while you're putting your UCAS applications through. Copying chunks or statements as part of UCAS statements online or in various different areas can have quite a significant effect because they will be put through a tracker device by the software at UCAS, and therefore your application may be totally rejected. And of course, don't leave it to the last minute. Finally, just to finish off a little bit, I just want to say that it's imperative that if you're applying for different things, chemistry tutors only get to see the course you've applied to as part of their assessment of your application. We don't know where else you've applied or what else you've applied to. So we can only judge your personal statement based on what we see. If you're interviewed, you may be expected to comment on some of the things you've written in your personal statement, your interests or various aspects. So if you say that you're an avid reader of any RSC journals like Chemistry World, make sure you understand some of the articles written in there before you turn up. And there's plenty of advice on the UCAS website for personal statements construction, so make sure you use that as a guidance tool before you even start looking at the process. Finally, obviously, if there's any further questions, I know these things will be put online, so you can always contact us at Brighton, but I'm sure there'll be further questions that we'll be happy to answer as we move through the evening. Excellent.
Thank you very much, Pradeep. Now we have Dr. Dowie Lewis and Dr. Tom Tatchell, who are going to speak to you about interview technique.
Okay, this is going to be a bit strange because we're kind of do a double act, and we've never double act before. So there's going to be one slide from each of us, and hopefully you'll not even notice that it's different. Go on, Tom, that's yours.
Okay, so to give you a bit of an idea what we would expect at Cardiff if you were to apply to study chemistry at Cardiff, the interview process is an integral part of your UCAS application. It's a chance for us to find out more about you, more than what is written on your UCAS form, but also a chance for you to ask questions as well.
Okay, so we're really going to highlight some of the things that are similar and some of the things that are different, but I think most of the time it's actually quite odd for a chemistry department not to interview in some way. When we mean interview, that can vary quite a lot. So what it basically means is you're going to have a conversation with a member of staff. That conversation is usually going to be about chemistry because, after all, the only thing that you and me have in common is that we like chemistry. And so the purpose of that interview, again, can vary. But what it really should be about is that you want to study chemistry. And if you're coming to visit UCL, then I want to know that you want to study chemistry at UCL. We also want to make sure you're capable. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a test. What that means is that we think you've got, and it's actually quite good being on a webcam, actually. I'm looking for that. I'm not looking for you to know everything that's on the A-level syllabus, but we will not try to set anybody up to fail. So we think that we're trying to find out how you think, not what you know, because we know what you're supposed to know because we can read the A-level syllabus as well. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see what it is that you can work out and what you understand about what you're actually supposed to know at the moment. We'll try another one.
Okay, so why do we interview at Cardiff? So again, we want to see why you want to study chemistry. This is going to be a very life-changing point for you, so we want to know why you want to study this subject long-term. What interests you about the subject? What has sparked your interest earlier on in your academic career? Why do you want to keep on with that? And again, as Debbie's explained, we want to then see what your background knowledge is. We want to see that if it's good enough for you then to go on and study chemistry at the degree level. And then what do you see yourself doing with the chemistry degree? Post-graduation, do you have any ideas of what you want to do with it? This is a 15-minute interview segment of a Cardiff Open Day, and as I say, it's informal in the way that it's not in a panel, so there's only a one-to-one chat with a member of academic staff.
Yeah, so really what we're trying to talk about a little bit more about is what kind of questions we're going to ask you. Now, as Bhavik has just mentioned in the personal statement, you should be telling us why you want to study chemistry. And there's some nice things about, you know, what you do, how you are as a person. That's something that we can chat about. But what I really want to know is, what do you understand about the chemistry? Now, if you've written down in your personal statement that you really love organic chemistry, then you can guess what the first question is going to be about. We're not out to trick you. We're not trying to find out things that you don't know. I want to know what you do know. And then to see whether you remember what you've done, which is a hard one to do. But it's that idea of if you've spoken about something, then it being a long time ago, remember a year isn't a long time ago, it's only a year, that we want to know what it is that you remember about things. For example, have you done any experiments? What did you do? What was the point of an experiment? And that's what we really want to do. And it really depends on an individual as whether we talk about what's on the syllabus. If you tell me that you've done an extended essay, or a project, and it's about something that's not on the A-level syllabus, then why should we be talking about the A-level syllabus? Let's talk about what interests you. So that's really what we want to try and do. We'll talk about chemistry that's to do with you.
Okay, so again, we'll start with a personal statement. We want to see what aspects of chemistry you've included in your personal statement, and then we will then expand upon these. Again, if you're going to put organic chemistry in there, we're going to start expanding on the theory that you've touched upon, and maybe go into some mechanistic knowledge that you may have. This won't be anything more than what you would have studied at A-level. Again, why do you have certain favourite experiments? So we will then maybe touch upon and delve into some more of the theory of those. And then to expand upon the whole chemistry A-level syllabus then, applying these different aspects that you enjoy to real-world problems. Okay, so seeing where these fit in with the bigger picture in the world at the moment.
This is something we both kind of agreed on, is that idea of, should you prepare? Now, I know this is, you know, for some people this is a very if you feel it's a very big deal, and it should be a big deal to some extent, but don't think that you can prepare, because otherwise it's not a test. There's no syllabus, so you don't know what's going to be asked anyway. But you've written a personal statement. Assume that we're going to start in your personal statement. Also, remember what you did last week. That's always a good thing. And if you've done some topics recently, then refresh them in your mind, because if you say, the typical thing I'll say is, well, what have you done recently? What are you currently studying? Because, again, think of it from our point of view, is that at UCL, for example, we'll start interviewing mid-November and we'll finish in mid-March. Now, that means that the people who we interview in mid-November have done one academic year and about half a term, and the ones who are doing it in March have done nearly the entire A-level syllabus. And so there's differences in what you actually know. But what you did recently is the same for all of you. It's what you did recently. And really it's that idea of, like, be enthusiastic. Imagine going into a job interview. You're not going to sit there and go, actually, I don't want to work at McDonald's. Even if you don't want to work at McDonald's, make it look like you want to work at McDonald's. It's the only time you can bluff me.
Okay. So what sort of chemistry questions will we ask? But there's no real way to define this because every interview is very different. Again, any sort of projects, extended projects or essays that you've done and you've included in your personal statement, we'll use these as a starting point. But then over the whole breadth of chemistry, organic, inorganic, physical, spectroscopic, there's a whole range of different questions we can ask you from mechanisms, redox chemistry, thermodynamics and kinetics, or delve into different spectroscopic techniques. Again, you can't really revise for it, but we won't ask you anything more than what you wouldn't have done at A-level at that point.
So this is what we've just mentioned, is that don't expect to be able to sit at the end of it and compare what questions did you get asked. Because remember, you're an individual, and so we've asked you questions that are aimed at you. You've got different interests. You may well be doing different qualifications. Don't assume that everybody in the room is doing A-levels. There'll be some of you doing IB, there'll be some of you doing, if we invited people from Europe, then we're doing all sorts of things. We may even invite people from Scotland. So there's just a funny face at me from the University of Edinburgh at the moment saying, what about the Scottish people? And of course they do Scottish Highs, that's different too. People may well be doing things like the Welsh Baccalaureate, get that one in, and International Baccalaureate. People may be applying with an access course or a BTEC. What you know and what your way of studying chemistry is different from everybody else, and therefore we're going to tune the interview to you. And so the question is, you know, can that be a fair interview? And the answer is, of course it is. What you have to do, you have to trust us. Okay? We do know what we're doing, sort of. And we all know as well that you can have a bad day at the office. If you're nervous about it, well, you're sitting in front of someone who discusses chemistry with students all the time. We know what someone looking nervous looks like, and we will take that into account. We won't say, oh, well, they were terrible at interview. Tough. They were terrible at interview, but they were clearly nervous. That's fine. That gets you out of that hole. Okay? So don't worry about an interview. It's not an interrogation. It's a conversation. You've got 15 or 20 minutes with someone who does what you want to do for a living. We actually enjoy doing this job, so, well, I hope we do. Therefore, you can see that we're enthusiastic about it, and we want you to be enthusiastic about it as well. Not sure what else we've got to say.
Okay, so I'm going to echo a lot of Dewi's words again. You can't really prepare for an interview. As I say, nothing will be asked outside of what you've already done at A-level, but we just want to delve into your understanding of the topics at that point. All we can ask really is that your chemistry knowledge is up to date. We won't ask anything outside of that, but showing enthusiasm is always going to be a key factor in winning us over.
I don't remember what we were going to say. So again, yes, just going back and thinking, what kind of questions? I mean, you've seen some of the questions that Tom says that he would expect to ask. I mean, it depends on your personal statement. If you've discussed this massive project you've done on bleach, then how have you worked out how much bleach you've got? Bleach is going to be oxidation reduction. Let's talk about that. Do you love organic chemistry? Then expect to do something. For example, if you've done the addition of ethene the addition of HBr onto ethene, then expect us to ask you, well, show me how you do that. But then maybe expect me to say, well, what if it's not ethene? What if it's propene? And to start thinking about what might be different. A lot of people do chemistry and biology. Now, what we like to see is that people actually see that chemistry and biology, when they're talking about the structure in DNA, are talking about the same thing. And why is DNA a helix? That's more for you to think about later on. But it's to know, do you know the core stuff? And to get a feel that you kind of have a feel for your subject. So, for example, a very good question, which sometimes flummoxes some very good students, is how big is an atom? It's one to think about. There you go. I've spoiled your tea time now, haven't I?
Okay, so what do we do with this information once we finish the interview? So staff will feed back then to all admissions tutors and give their insight into what they sort of feeling that they get from the applicant who sat in front of them earlier on in the day. This information then tailors what sort of offer applicants will get. Again, if you've had a bad day, please don't worry. We do see nervous applicants all the time. But as long as you do show some knowledge and some willing and some enthusiasm, that's going to go a long way in giving you the offer that you want. Remember as well also that the interview is also an opportunity for you to ask questions to members of staff as well. As we've explained, it's more of a chat and a discussion than an interview. So you should be able to ask questions one-on-one to members of staff as well. As I say, we want to find out about you, paint us the whole picture in addition to what we get from your UCAS application form.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephen Henderson from the University of Edinburgh, who will be talking about different types of chemistry courses that are available.
Good evening. As was pointed out, I'm Dr. Steve Henderson, and I am the Scotsman. I'm the strange accented man. So if anyone needs an interpreter, please do not phone in and say, what was he talking about? I'm talking English with a slight Scottish accent. Basically, what I'm going to do is talk about not whether you just do chemistry or you do environmental and sustainable chemistry or medicinal biological chemistry. I'm talking about extras. The things that you can do that are hopefully going to make you more employable and give you a lot of fun. A small caveat, generally the examples I'm citing are based on the University of Edinburgh degrees, but I'm pretty confident that the vast majority of universities offer directly comparable, but there may be slight differences, so it's well worth checking for each individual university that you're applying to. Check their website and see if what they're offering suits you. We only offer either the MChem with a year abroad or with a year in industry. That's it. I said MChem, not bachelors. Please note, the MChem is a degree in Scotland, in Scottish universities, and some of the universities in England they call it an MSci, that's MSCI, Master of Science. It's an integrated master's degree, and the reason for this is that a lot of our Scottish students take the full 4 years to do a bachelor's or the full 5 years to do an MChem degree. With good A-levels or high IBs or even good advanced hires from Scotland, you can enter into year 2, making it the same duration. But in the penultimate year, you will apply to various industrial companies. You will apply and hopefully be selected for interview. You are competing against your own peer group, and you will then hopefully be offered one or more positions that you will look at with a great deal of enthusiasm. What it means basically is that you're going out in year 4 of the 5, i.e. the penultimate year, so by that stage you've effectively completed an ordinary degree. Now that's important because to the employer you are useful. It means that they know they're bringing in someone who's graduate level in their knowledge of chemistry. Now, this academic year that has just finished, in 2011-12, the average salary on the industrial placements was £16,700. Tax-free. You don't have to tell your parents that's what you're getting. As one of my students informed me yesterday, I've told them I'm getting nothing. Little chancer. It's a full year in duration. You normally start about the July and you finish 12 months later. You work in an industrial research laboratory on a defined project, and you are visited twice by your academic supervisor from Edinburgh. This is an assessment visit in the first case, and in the second, it's a final assessment visit. When you come back at the start of the next academic year, what the students tell me is the worst part. They do a presentation to not only some of us, the academic staff who mark it, but to their own peer group, who tend to heckle. I think it's quite amusing. It's only the ones who've already done their presentations that heckle. 20% of your degree classification comes from year 3, and 20% comes from the year that you spend on placement. The placements are very competitive. If you want to work in medicinal chemistry, pharmaceutical chemistry, you may be wanting to work for a big company like GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. Obviously, they're very competitive. Placements in industry are all over the UK and abroad. Excuse me. When I say abroad, I mean the USA, lots of different bits of Europe, and significant number of placements in the Far East. There's a thought. We only use universities in the Universitas system. Now, basically, we reckon that it's very important that you are in a good university when you're doing the year in industry abroad. Now, normally you will have a supervisor, a local supervisor from another university, someone that we know. They're there to help as well. But by and large, in the abroad side, you are potentially a long way from home. The obvious example is that I've got a student who was in Tokyo last year and another student in Tokyo this year. I've got two students who are doing the coolest degree that we offer. They're in Novosibirsk in Siberia. You can also do lots of year abroads without the industrial component by spending the entire academic year, not the calendar year, but the academic year. You can spend it in a European university, one of the ones that I have an exchange agreement with, and that's under the Erasmus scheme. You pick up an Erasmus grant of about €3,000 for that. Once again, there's absolutely no need to tell anyone about that. The Singapore option, you spend half the academic year in NTU, Nanyang Technical University, and the other half of the year you spend in industry, being paid. That, to a lot of people, combines the best of both worlds. Why do you want to spend an extra year at university? Now, let's consider this. Why are you wanting to do a degree in chemistry? Well, we all know, we all love chemistry. Most of us are verging on fanatical about it. We love the subject. But that's not the only reason. You want, at the end of the day, to get a good job, to earn lots of money, and have a very comfortable lifestyle until you get married. Now, to that end, you're trying to produce something on your CV that makes an employer say, this student is special over another student. You've got to accept there'll be a lot of people applying for the best jobs. You've got to make your CV, everything that is in that has got to say, I am above the average. Graduate, honours graduate. We're talking about the best of the best here. A lot of companies are multinational. They may want to send students abroad. They may want to have someone who's actually convinced that they want to work in industrial chemistry. When I did my degree, I didn't know if I wanted to work in industry because I'd never done it. Then I found out about research. From the industrial company's point of view, they're basically getting a chance to interview you for a whole year. For the students who are going away, whether it's with industrial placement or whether it's just with a year abroad, they are showing they have got the bottle to move out of their comfort zone. And companies like that. I mean, those two guys in Novosibirsk in Siberia, how far out of your comfort zone is that? There's another facet to it. If you are somewhere abroad, you're living in a completely different culture. You've got a chance to travel, weekends, holidays, you can travel around. My students who are currently in Hong Kong are not. They're actually in Thailand, visiting that for 4 days. They get a chance to travel. Their supervisor will work them a bit harder when they get back, but there's the chance to do this. If you're in a European university, you are in somewhere where the native language is not English. Therefore, you're making yourself more employable by showing additional language skills. But most of all, it is a wonderful, wonderful experience. Chemistry degrees are exciting. The joy of learning, of that sudden light bulb moment, the ping, where you suddenly think, that's why. There's a lovely feeling. But if you can do that in a completely different environment, working in an industrial company where maybe you in some way contribute to something that benefits humanity, or if you can work in a university abroad where you're being treated on equal footing with a first-year PhD student, this is giving extra value. And all of those things are wonderful. In my opinion, the best reason for doing an MChem is because you get the option of either doing a year abroad or a year in industry. This year, this current academic year at Edinburgh, we have 99 students in our final year. 67 of them are out on placement, either abroad or in industry, or in some cases a combination of the two. We obviously survey our students as soon as they get back, and while they're there, in fact. We have had, over the last 6 years, 100% satisfaction from them. The industrial students have earned money. They like that. And I quote one of my students who's just back from Hong Kong. He said, "It was the best year of my life. I didn't want to come home." And to me, that summed it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I just wondered now